My experience with the Resident Evil games is mostly limited to the first four and their remakes, and I started playing them after the Resident Evil 4 remake was already out. While I would say that I enjoyed all of them, I find myself looking back more fondly on the originals. So while I was somewhat interested in Requiem, I wasn't exactly eager to retread the gameplay of the remakes. Also, $70 for a single-player game is a big ask for me, especially when 20 will get you Silksong, but I digress. I have not played Requiem, nor do I intend to. This video will be an overview of what I have observed from a playthrough I watched on Shirako's channel, and the footage is theirs as well. You might think that the lack of hands-on experience with the game disqualifies me from critiquing this, but consider it an experiment, I suppose. Getting the gameplay out of the way first, the combat is very much like the remakes. Shoot the weak points, follow up on staggered enemies, occasional grenade. Minor variations or isolated segments exist to shake things up ever so slightly. As for exploration, I swear there has to be like a 10 commandments or something for how to make a Resident Evil game, because the formula is comically consistent. These games are sometimes referred to as having puzzles, but they are more like scavenger hunt games. You run around searching for resources or items that fit into specific slots, all while in some kind of eccentrically designed building. Then you progress until you reach an underground lab and fight a giant flesh monster, after which you have to escape as the self-destruct sequence counts down. I'm not saying I dislike it, but I find the consistent formula amusing. If the gameplay of the remakes is what you like and all you care about, then you will find a familiar friend here. But I have some criticisms. First off, this is very much a AAA game. This of course means that it looks very nice, but it also means that the gameplay is homogenized with the rest of AAA games. If you played the remakes, you might know what I'm talking about. Diegetic or creative menu systems replaced with black bars, characters thinking out loud for the player, yellow paint on interactable parts of the environment. For me, the most egregious is the second one. I absolutely hate characters that talk out loud to let me know what I should be doing. It's because I can only ever see it as the developers patronizing me. The immersion is gone, and I'm being told that they think I'm stupid, or that I have no attention span. This is a bit of a downer tangent, but the reason they do stuff like this is that, unfortunately, games journalism matters to the industry. Your game will make more money if it is reviewed positively, and if you want a positive review, you have to appeal to 85 over at IGN. Actually, 85 might be giving them too much credit. Anyway, the point is that modern AAA games often feel more like a product to me as opposed to art. So naturally, cynicism follows. As for some more specific critiques of gameplay, I wasn't too keen on the leveling system with Leon. He gets points for killing enemies or collecting specific odds and ends. Then he goes to a box or a computer to buy upgrades. I feel like RE4 did this better with the merchant. You pick up money or items and then trade them to pay for attachments. They try to contextualize the system in Requiem by giving you a wristband that tracks your kills, but it seems pretty silly to think that the military or whoever would turn an incursion into a zombie-infested city into a game where you can earn better equipment. I feel like there is a missed opportunity to have scavengers that trade with you or something. It would make it more immersive and add to the world building. I know there are forces at work trying to keep people from getting too close, but the joy of writing is that you can make anything work if you are talented enough. Next up are the puzzles. I really think these games could stand to have more challenging or complicated puzzles in them. Something that engages your brain beyond find, note, and enter code. Seriously, they even have yellow text on the important bits. Again, 85 at IGN will love this. I think there was like one in RE4 that I remember being even slightly engaging. Try challenging people's memory or power of observation, instead of just challenging them to read and see color. But whatever you do, don't make it like Code Veronica where you get locked out of weapons if you leave your fire extinguisher in the metal detector box. If you know, you know. The last thing I'll mention in the gameplay is the levels. The hospital looks neat, but the rest of the locations feel somewhat uninspired. You have sewers again, which, fine I guess, but the second half of the game mostly takes place in the city ruins. We are talking like 4 hours of edited footage that takes place here, and then the rest of it is in an underground facility that is very reminiscent of the RE2 and 3 remakes. To put it simply, I think this game is lacking in level diversity and originality. Actually, I would say that the second half of this game dips in quality in general compared to the first half, but I'm getting ahead of myself because we still have to talk about the story. The story for this game is, well, it's pretty bad, even by Resident Evil standards I might add. Now, I predict that someone will say something to the effect that Resident Evil games have always had silly or nonsense stories. Assuming I agree with that idea, my response would be 1. That if this game had a good story, you would be much better off and happier for it, and 2. If you told the writer of Requiem's story that their story was silly, they would be a bit upset. It is clear from the dramatic tone of this game that they want you to take it seriously. They want the theme of saving people to be relevant to both Leon and Grace, and the acting is doing much of the heavy lifting to reflect that intention. The original games had mixed to terrible acting, and the tone was often far more jovial as a result. As such, it was easier to handwave those stories as an excuse for the fun gameplay. The remakes and Requiem want to be taken seriously as dramatic stories. Therefore, they deserve the scrutiny that comes with that decision. The story starts with FBI agent Grace Ashcroft, not to be confused with the Ashfords of Code Veronica. Poor naming choice in my opinion. Anyway, Grace is she peck typing? Because that is not how you hold your hands over the keyboard. Forget it. Grace is being sent on a mission to investigate the next in a series of infected corpses. Her boss tells her that the next one is at the Redwood Hotel. Then he says, "Look, I know that's where your mother was murdered, and I know it'll be upsetting for you. Alyssa died 8 years ago. Perhaps it's time for you to face the past. Confront that fear head on." I don't have much faith in the dialogue being good in this game. Anyway, Grace heads to the hotel and a cop lets her inside. She explores and finds a series of fake-out jump scares, and eventually comes across a picture of herself with a key taped on the back, along with the message, "Let's talk, room 204. Personally, I'd GTFO if I saw that. But Grace, who has been characterized as klutzy, nervous, and addle-brained up to this point, decides to go at it alone. How brave and resolute of her. She goes to the room and finds a bed covered in pictures of her and her mother. She picks one up and we get a flashback to 8 years ago. She and her mother are hanging out at the hotel when the phone rings. The voice on the other end says, "Miss Ashcroft?" and then hangs up after Grace says yes. Grace doesn't think much of it, but then the lights go out and Mom says, "They're coming," and they try to leave. This may seem like a small moment, but it is important for much later. The point is, Mom knows something and she's keeping it to herself. Anyway, they come across the hotel manager and he's like, "Oh, don't worry, the outage is just the result of the old system in this building. I'll fix it soon." And then he gets his throat slit. Mom shoots the slitter and then hides something behind a painting. They run a little farther and Mom says, "I will explain all of this one of these days. Grace, please know that you are my hope. Never forget that." Grace is like, "What are you talking about?" Again, we'll come back to this later. Grace says, "We've got to get our stuff," and Mom is like, "We can come back for it later," which is kind of a weird exchange given what's just happened. But then the slitter teleports behind Mom and kills her. And when I say teleports, I almost mean that literally. You watch the scene, and that's the only explanation for how he suddenly shows up here. The slitter says, "Found you," and then falls over and knocks an oil lamp off the table that sets the room on fire. I'm sorry, are we in the 1800s? An oil lamp? Really? I know that the power is out, but why is this random room lit? In an era where we have all kinds of battery-powered... You know what? Don't think about it. It's an old hotel, shut up. Also, I feel like this sequence would have been better served as the opening of the game. It would be a much better tone setter, and you can end on the scene of Grace crying over her mother than have the title drop. Then just go to 8 years later at the FBI office. So Grace goes and gets the thing that Mom hid and finds a journal and a floppy disk. The journal just says that Mom thinks she's being followed and that she can't let anything happen to Grace. Nice and vague. Anyway, the officer shows up and says, "Something stung me." Then he goes zombie and starts to shoot at Grace with a shotgun. Again, remember this. So Grace kills the officer and then hears music. She goes after it and finds a guy listening to a gramophone. Did he haul that thing all the way here just to reveal himself like this? Whatever. He says, "It hasn't been easy, but after much effort, here we finally are." Grace is like, "Who are you?" And he says, "I'm the one who brought you here. I know now that you're the one I've been searching for. The special one. The chosen one, Miss Ashcroft." Then the door automatically locks behind her and the guy knocks her out. So this abandoned hotel has automatically locking doors, huh? Or maybe this guy has telekinesis? You have to understand, small details like teleporting killers and automatic locks that are pushing the plot forward is pretty lame. It speaks to a disinterest in logical story progression, and makes the payoffs diluted at best. Anyway, next we go over to Leon. He is investigating the same stuff as Grace. He's talking with Sherry Birkin, and she sends him a photo of a person of interest. It's the guy that kidnapped Grace. His name is Victor Gideon. Sherry also says that there is a report of a missing police officer at the Wrenwood Hotel, the same place that the fifth body was found. Leon decides to go and check it out. He drives over and arrives just as Victor is walking out the door with Grace. Wow, what unbelievably perfect timing. Leon tries to walk after him, but Victor notices him and starts turning people into zombies with a dart gun. Leon runs down the street and shoots a bunch of zombies, but ends up losing Victor. Then Sherry says that Victor purchased a clinic a few years back and gives Leon the address. Then Leon takes off his glove and reveals an infection on his hand. And Sherry says, "Leon, we're running out of time." Again, let's have a talk about the dialogue. Sherry saying, "we're running out of time," has basically nothing to do with what she said prior. She can't see that Leon took off his glove. The only thing to conclude is that she is saying it for the audience, which again is not great for immersion or engaging storytelling. But if you are a hack writer, you mostly just think in terms of what feels dramatic at the time. Anyway, back to Grace. She wakes up and is hanging upside down as her blood is being drained. So this is Victor's clinic, and he clearly wants to keep Grace restrained, but he didn't do anything to keep her sedated. Womp womp. Grace is able to grab the tube in her arm and pull the stand with the blood jar over. It shatters and she pulls it up and uses the glass to cut her restraints. Sure, whatever. Grace starts running around the place and comes across a book. It's like a creepy children's book about a creature that hides from the light, and it ends with some bloody text that says, "Stay in the light." I mean, it's not yellow text, but it may as well be. Grace eventually comes across a body. Then a big hand picks it up and starts eating it. It's the first stalker monster. You know, the unkillable monster that stalks you in these games. Grace runs from it until she comes to a room with some lights on. The monster starts searing in the light, and runs away. Pretty sure the book was unnecessary if you're going to do this. Also, it doesn't really remain consistent, but whatever. So Grace has to find a fuse to open a gate that will let her into the main lobby. And I'm thinking, why not bust open a window and climb out? This was something accounted for as early as the first game. Or the remaster anyway. Wesker tells you not to go outside. And if you try anyway, dogs will try and eat your face. Then 2 and 3 are in a zombie-infested city. It is indicative of something that this small thing was accounted for 25 years ago, but not in this oh-so-serious drama. Anyway, Grace gets the fuse for the door and tries to get out, but the monster is hot on her heels and grabs her, pulling her into the darkness. Anyway, what's Leon doing? He arrives at the clinic and we get a camera view of him at the front door. He walks in and a nurse says that the doctor has been expecting him. She takes him to a room and closes the door behind him. Then we see that a camera is inside the eye of a nearby skeleton. Leon meanders a bit, then a voice over the intercom sounds an alert. The nurse comes back into the room and says that they need to leave right away. Then a doctor comes in and chainsaws the crap out of her. To save us some time, I'll just say that once Leon arrived, Victor went scorched earth on the place, which in a way seems reasonable when you are part of some evil world domination plot and the cops are onto you. Anyway, Leon kills a bunch of zombies and then walks past the gate just as Grace is crawling through. Wow, that's 2 perfect timings for Leon. I sure hope we don't get more of those. So Leon kills the big monster and starts questioning Grace. She doesn't know what's going on, so Leon is like, okay, let's leave. Then Victor locks down the building, separating Leon and Grace. How unfortunate. If only they were standing somewhere different. Then a shutter starts to close between them. Sure. Leon hands Grace his gun, which is fine, but the size of it is pretty amusing. It's like bigger than her forearm. One shot and she breaks her wrist. Anyway, Victor is here with Leon. He says, "Let's have a talk." Then Leon tries to shoot him with a second gun, which is much smaller than the one he gave Grace, but whatever. Victor grabs him and notes the infection on his neck. "I see you're exhibiting symptoms too," he says. "Umbrella's curse." Then he knocks him out. Back over with Grace, she explores a bit until she comes across a little blind girl in a cell. The girl asks, is someone there, then gets out of bed and falls to the floor. It's like they want to hammer home the fact that she's blind. She basically lives in this cell, but she can't find her way to the floor. It's... whatever. Grace asks why she's there, and the girl just says, "Everyone's gone." Strange kid. There's a dead guy on the floor that becomes not dead and says, "Stay away from her." Then he dies again. Okay. There is also another cell next to the girls, but this one is empty and has a small hole in the wall. More on that later. Grace takes the dead guy's keycard and begins her search of the building. She has to find some quartz to open the door to escape. She comes across Victor again. She asks why he kidnapped her, and he says, "I liberated you. You're not like other people. Through you, Elpis can finally be set free." Grace says, "Why me?" And Victor says, "Because my master made you who you are." So these are the kind of vague answers that tell me a mystery box is at play. It's meant to pique your curiosity without giving you direct answers. I'm sure in the right story I could find it interesting, but in my experience the answers are rarely satisfying. You need to build my faith that you'll provide a satisfying conclusion, and in order to do that you need good writing. And so far it has been iffy, so to speak. Anyway, an alarm sounds and Victor says, "Phase 2 is about to begin." And we see that a new zombie type is waking up or something. Victor asks Grace, "Would you like to see what's hidden under the hood?" Which is akin to the line Sherry said to Leon about not having much time. The player sees the hooded zombie, Grace does not. And Victor's line refers to nothing in the prior conversation. So Grace runs out of the room and locks Victor inside. Then she pushes a door open and hides at the opposite end of the room. Kind of clever, I guess. Victor breaks out of his room and calls for Grace. He goes through the door she opened and says, "There's no escaping your destiny." Again, we're just left to wonder what he means until the writers give us the answers. After a lot more running around, Grace finds the location of the last quartz container, but the images used as a password are too damaged to see. The buttons are in Braille, however. But Grace remembers that the blind girl was reading a Braille book. So someone created a puzzle box with Braille on it, which got damaged to where reading the Braille was the only way to open it. And then there happens to be a blind girl who happens to read Braille located in the building. So, since they put Sherry in this game, sort of, I'm going to use her as an example. In Resident Evil 2 Classic, you need to play as Sherry for a brief section because there is a small window that only she can fit through. And why is Sherry in the city? Well, she's looking for her parents. It is such a simple thing, especially compared to the blind girl we need to solve a specific puzzle. How much would you like to bet that I have more comparisons like this later on? Anyway, Grace asks the girl for help and we get her name, Emily. Grace carries her to the puzzle box and then kills some zombies while Emily works on it. Emily gets the quartz and is about to give it to Grace when the stalker monster bursts through the wall. What unfortunate timing. It grabs Emily and takes her to the basement, so Grace follows. Back over with Leon, we see that Victor has tied his hands behind him and sat him in the chair. Your brain might have tricked you into thinking that Leon was tied to the chair, but that's not the case. Only his hands are tied behind him. So Victor starts creepily saying stuff, none of which is particularly interesting or informative. Shocker. "You're an investigator, so investigate. Is this where I conduct my research? Yes. Are the answers to your disease here? Yes." Leon comes back with, I do have a question. When's the last time you brushed your teeth?" Because Leon is giving this guy nothing and shows that he isn't intimidated in the slightest. Victor asks, "Do you believe in human evolution?" Oh boy, here we go. "I have devoted my life to studying it, while you have devoted your life to failure." As he's talking, Leon pulls a knife from a pouch on his back and starts cutting the rope. When Victor says failure, he leans in and this gives Leon the opportunity to kick him and go for his gun. Victor runs away and closes the stairs behind him. "You're a dead man walking," he shouts as they shut. Leon stumbles over to the counter and grabs an injector, which I assume is meant to mitigate the effects of his disease. He calls back to talk to Sherry and says, "Just had a chat with Victor, he is guano insane." So let's talk about all of this. Victor has access to so many options of restraining a person in this clinic, and he opts for tying hands behind the back and nothing else. This allows Leon to easily escape, which is not very satisfying. Secondly, we need to talk about Victor's priorities. He very much needs Grace alive. This is somewhat apparent from what he said earlier, but it will become even more explicit later on. As such, he should be doing everything in his power to protect her. But back in the hotel, he turns the cop into a zombie and does nothing as it nearly kills Grace several times. Then he lets Grace run around the clinic in the middle of a zombie infestation that he caused. Let's do another comparison. Ashley from Resident Evil 4 is wanted by the Illuminados to enact their world domination plan. They want her alive, and every time they get to her, they carry her away instead of killing her. Victor should be a stalker enemy throughout this segment, constantly searching for Grace in order to subdue her. It's not like Grace is hard to find either, just follow the gunshots. Or, maybe look at the cameras you have everywhere. I think someone might point to the fact that Victor is clearly insane, but insanity is not synonymous with being a retard. If you want your villain to be intimidating, which clearly they do, you have to make their actions align with their priorities. Otherwise, you end up with a lot of unsatisfying moments and incongruities. Anyway, after some fighting, Leon makes his way up an elevator to Victor's office. Sherry hacks the computer and sees that the infection she and Leon have is symptomatic of a T-virus infection. There is also a document that refers to something called Elpis, along with a picture of Grace. Speaking of Grace, she is running through the underground shooting stuff until she finds Emily in a cell with a bunch of dolls. The stalker creature has been collecting these things. Grace runs around some more until she can open the cell and take Emily up a nearby elevator. The stalker attacks and they make it out just in time. Emily gives Grace the quartz and they head outside. They come across a helicopter and a guy named Harry who can pilot it, but Harry has a bad leg and no key. So Grace has to go and get it for him. She leaves Emily in the chopper and heads into the nearby building. She eventually finds Victor again, who is on a phone call. He confirms to the person on the other end that Grace is the one. Then he cackles to himself and activates the self-destruct sequence. Grace runs through a torrent of blood and makes her way back to the helipad. We see that zombies are trying to get past the fence, so she gives Harry the key and they try to take off. The zombies start climbing on the chopper and try to break in. This causes a rather spectacular crash, which kills Harry and no one else. Rest in peace, Harry, you legend. Emily is wounded, so Grace tries to carry her to a nearby chapel, as zombies start to close in. Meanwhile, Leon up in Victor's office sees the crash. He turns around and sees a sniper rifle sitting against the wall. "Hello, gorgeous," he says. So let's recap this. Victor's office just happens to be at a vantage point instead of in the basement or something. Leon just so happens to be here as Grace has her crash. The crash happens in a place where Leon can see them, and there just so happens to be a sniper rifle right there. Hey guys, I think this story might be really bad. Let's make another comparison. In the first game, you are trying to find Bravo Team. They have already been exploring in and around the manor, which contextualizes why you find ammo in certain weapons. Resident Evil 2 takes place in a police station, so finding weapons and ammo works nicely for the immersion. Requiem is in a clinic. You ever been to a clinic? Not a whole lot of guns in those. Or ammo, come to think of it. Maybe there's a note that explains this. To whom it may concern, I've left a sniper rifle in the office on the top floor in case you need to shoot zombies to save someone that's been in a helicopter crash. Anyway, Leon kills the zombies and heads down to the chapel. They are about to go down to the basement because Leon says it's the way to the water treatment plant. I don't know how he would know that or why that would be the case. They are about to go down, but more zombies come into the chapel. So Leon tells Grace to go on without him. Right, so Grace has to carry Emily through the underground by herself. You know there could be zombies down there. Wouldn't it be better to go with them or have them wait for you? Please, sir, can I have better writing? Sod off, you cunt. Leon kills the zombies and then goes after Grace. Over with Grace, she puts Emily down and then runs around trying to activate stuff to get the big roof door to open while the stalker runs after her. Grace opens the door just as the monster is under it, and the sunshine melts the monster. Hooray! Grace goes back to Emily and it looks like Emily is dead. Grace tries CPR and then Emily starts convulsing and transforming into a big flesh monster. It's about to attack Grace, but for the fourth time this game, Leon arrives at just the right moment and starts shooting the monster. I've already said it, but having these perfectly timed arrivals is not very satisfying. I can see plainly the plot armor that has been placed on Grace. The writers like her too much, which causes any investment or emotional connection I might have with her to unravel. So Leon kills the monster, and Grace is quite upset by this. She is feeling pretty guilty for being unable to save this child that helped her escape. If this story were better written, this payoff would be quite potent, but so much of it is arbitrary or coincidental. They are really trying to tug at the heartstrings here. Grace's actor is putting in so much work, but just like the animators in Arcane Season 2, she is let down massively by the writers. A lot of people will feel emotional upon seeing this. but it is so easy to emotionally manipulate people nowadays. You get an actor putting in tons of effort, or throw in a bunch of nostalgia, you'll get a response. But in the long run, how much is it really worth? Personally, I'll take lingering meaning over fleeting emotions any day. I will say that when I first saw this, I thought it was kind of a ballsy choice to kill off the little girl. Which, if you know how this story ends, it is quite funny to look back on this. Anyway, Leon tells Grace that he gets it, but right now they are still alive and that they have to keep going. Grace throws down the gun he gave her and says, no. Then she walks away. Leon leans down to pick up the gun and has a plot cough, which I guess stops him from following Grace, because he would do that as he knows that she is important to the villain. Grace heads up some stairs and Victor is waiting for her. How did he know that she would... Should I bother? He says, Elpis is in reach, Grace. You should come with me. You feel lost, but you're not. You're exactly where you need to be. Then he opens a door and we see some Wesker-looking mofo. I assume they are trying to evoke Wesker anyway. Grace asks, who are you? And the guy says, Raccoon City. You're the reason for its destruction. But you're also the key to building a brave new world. You're the final piece. Let us show you your true purpose. That's a really long fucking name, dude. Seriously, just have him say his name. It's not that big of a deal anyway. And all this vagary about who Grace is and why she's so important is quite boring at this point. And I don't have the confidence that the answers will be satisfying anyway, so why do you even bother? Well, 85 over at IGN said it would be a great way to build suspense. Yeah, I bet he did. So we are at about the halfway point of this game, and it has taken much longer to make this than I intended. Which means I'm gonna take a break. But before I go, I'll let you know that the writing gets much worse. Bye!